Greg, you are an entrepreneur at heart. Um, my understanding is you started your career um, building a startup that sold to eBay. You
Yeah.
later on, joined Hootsuite as a founding member of the early team, headquartered in Vancouver, and you created or were instrumental in creating and launching their enterprise go-to-market strategy. I think today Hootsuite currently generates over $200 million in ARR. Um, Incredible
You can
organization.
almost
I
double
look
it actually for what they're going for this year. They're growing incredibly quickly.
incredible. So I look forward to kind of hearing from you about what you learned from that experience. Today, you're the co-founder and CEO of Commit, an AI talent agent. That's probably a very simplistic way of putting it. But why don't you give the audience a little bit, fill in the gaps. What did I miss? What did I get right? Who's Greg?
If you asked my mom, she used to call me a wheeler dealer, just like your Uncle Tim, which is like a compliment, but like, hey, you're different, right? So my parents are teachers. I grew up in Victoria, British Columbia, really, really lucky. But there was always just this thing. I just liked creating things and building things and finding angles on things, whether it was, selling chocolate almonds. I needed to figure out a way to sell the most chocolate almonds. There's just something about problem solving that I'm obsessed with, and just the act of creation and building. And it used to be art when I was a kid, but then I kind of figured out you could build businesses and you could create the rules. And it was always trying to like, if there was the box, I was always trying to find the space outside the box. And so, yeah, I think it's one of those things that I just had. In undergrad, I started multiple businesses. Uh, but the one that really stuck was with some other UVic grads, which was eBay market research. Back when eBay was like 100 times bigger than Amazon, and we built this research tool by scraping it off of eBay. Got a cease and desist order, then licensed the data from them. Then there's just it's taking actions, right? And that's one of the things I learned early on was, hey, what happens if we propose to eBay to sell their data for them? We built all these tools and APIs and took these raw CSV flat files and turned them into data. And we partner with them on that, and we proposed something, and then eBay partnered with us, and then we sold that to eBay, and it was really, really an amazing path. And I kind of felt really blessed to be in an area that was Victoria, British Columbia, go to a really great business school where I got exposed to really great Silicon Valley entrepreneurs like Jeff Mellett, who was like the 11th employee at Yahoo, and had this path there where I was like, okay, now it's time to go and do things that satisfy the social side of myself. And my dad was a school principal, was always involved in local community events, uh, and so I decided to kind of go and apply the business stuff to something that was a little bit more helping people advance their living situations. And I joined a nonprofit in Nigeria that was doing a women's farming co-op and a microfinance, and got to take all these skills that I learned in building businesses and apply it to other areas. And that was just, I could talk forever about that time, but I think the number one thing is that was the most underappreciated part of living in that part of the world at that time, was how entrepreneurial it was. And being that kind of black sheep in Victoria where you didn't see a lot of entrepreneurship, then going to a place that is uncharacteristically, just being around people that all were building things and hustling, it was amazing. And so, that all kind of culminated. And I'll fast forward, I did school at Ivy, met some really great people, but when it came time to the next career stop, it was like I was very certain about what I wanted to do. I wanted to find a mentor that I could learn from, that had been there before. I wanted a team that I could really, jive with, that I really loved building with. And I wanted to put myself in a situation that was growing. And so at that time in 2010, at that point, if you just read TechCrunch, it was either e-commerce or social media. And, I got connected to Ryan Holmes from somebody that I actually had employed at the eBay company. And as soon as I met him, he checked the boxes with somebody that I could learn from. He had that, 7 to 10 years of experience, had built a kind of product that had that early whiff of product market fit. and it was a great team. And that team was where I met my co-founder Bear, and got to build. He was on the engineering side. He wrote the first line of code at Hootsuite. And my job was to figure out how to make money, specifically on the enterprise go-to-market side of things. And so uh, that was just everything up until that point. You know, feeling like an outcast in Victoria, British Columbia, where I wanted to build stuff, to having experience building on early stage platforms. And actually, we were one of the first freemium SaaS go-to-market tools at that company, that original company. But it all kind of culminated towards Hootsuite, where I was able to apply my experiences at that point, but then really, contribute to a company that just had tailwinds behind it. Social media was taking off. There was going to be a winner in this category. And it was just like people say, when you have that opportunity to get onto a rocket ship, you don't argue over which seat, you just go in and you start to contribute. And so I think that is a lion's share of my experience before Commit. And actually, really, a lot of those themes still continue today with Commit and what we're trying to build today.
So if you just reflect back to those early days, fill us in. Were you working out of a garage? Were you kind of working out of a campsite in the mountains north of Vancouver? Like, what was the vibe? What did you learn from that experience? What was that like?
The early days?
Yeah,
Yeah, the early days were not glamorous. The early days were in a um, bit of a rundown office in East Van. Um, if you haven't been to Vancouver, East Vancouver is a lower income area. It's got a lot of human tragedy when it comes to addiction and substance abuse.
sure.
But that's also kind of where the cheap real estate is, right? And that's where a lot of creativity happens when you have city centers. And that's what we were doing. Like, we're building a new category at Hootsuite. I think one of the things that most people get wrong about that company is it almost, as it grew, like as it grew and we got these offices, I think the headline, the corporate branding was, oh, hey, we got beer taps and we play hard and we got these cool, funky, you can work out of tents. I think the thing that most people get wrong was it wasn't like work hard, play hard. It was like you're working so friggin' hard. You're like late nights and things like that, that once you accomplish something, you're looking around, it's like, hey, let's have a beer. Like, that's great, right? Like, it was one of these things where um that was like 1% of it was like, hey, because you have this opportunity in front of you. And the other thing that most people, you got to reframe things, like back then, 2010, and it's a bit hipsterish to say it this way, but I'm going to try to articulate the right way. It wasn't the popular thing to be in tech, and it definitely wasn't the popular thing to be in tech in Canada, and it definitely was not the popular thing to be in tech in Vancouver. It was outliers and people that, as there's just a percentage of the population that we need, that whenever everyone's doing this one thing, they don't go, oh, that one thing's bad. They go, oh, cool, that's taken care of. We got enough humans working on this. I'm going to go and do this other thing that makes no logical sense, right? Like, there's something else out there. And they're kind of adventurers, right? They're people that are going and trying to settle new lands and new categories. And that's what you had. You had this like huge, this great population of individuals, with their own senses and sensibilities and characteristics and like weirdness. Like, we had one developer that wore Pikachu outfits to like, and like, it was cool. Like, it was like, and you kind of embraced that. And so um that's one of the things that you have to frame things the right way when you think about that time. It was a bunch of individuals. There wasn't any bankers. I was the business guy because I had the MBA, right? And like, even then I had to like I had to convince people that I was cool, like I wasn't this bean counter, right? And so I I think that is a quality. And I think the biggest lessons that I've learned from that is, I think that's where a lot of value gets created. That's where the 0 to 1s happen, right? With unique thoughts, unique individuals, people that don't fit in other neat boxes. And there's this partnership between the 0 to 1s and the 1s to the hundreds, where you can't scale a company with those people. You need to introduce other DNA into a company for it to scale. And that is just the ebb and flow of companies, right? You have these 0 to 1 folks that are non-logical builders and creators, and they're going to go and do things that don't kind of make sense on paper. And then when they hit, you need to now have a partnership with people that know how to take patterns and scale them.
You said like an entrepreneur or an early team, the whole team, it's kind of like they're on an adventure. They're in uncharted territory. They're figuring things out that haven't been figured out before. And there's a beauty to that. I think I would just transition that, you saying there's a often different breed between that collective profile or team profile, and then how do you scale it? And I know that's a big part of what you did at Hootsuite was sure helping get it off the ground, but then scaling it to something much, much bigger.
Yeah, I was always the translator, right? And so I got us to around $10 million in ARR, and just to a point where we could actually hire adults to scale things. And so yeah, I think I think I think the mistake most companies make when they're going through that translation or that transition is that they define culture as qualities or characteristics of people, right? Which, even if the qualities and characteristics of those people are like the Burning Man, open-minded type of thing, you're still not diversifying yourself if you're defining by qualities and characteristics.
Sure.
The best definition of culture that I think when Commit grows, and we're going to evolve past, it has to do with the intention of the individual. And there were people that were really amazing culture fits that joined in the later years, and there was people that weren't. And this is not, I know we're not supposed to use war analogies, but this is my best. My definition of culture or culture fit for a company is when you're working with somebody and you have no question where their guns are pointed. Because it's more of I've been in companies where you're in that figurative foxhole and you're kind of like out there fighting the good fight, and you're looking around, it's like, that guy's not even looking out this way.
Mm-hmm.
They're spending all their time looking inside the foxhole. You're like, this is where our attention should be focused. This shouldn't be here. And so I think intention, if you can kind of start to move away from strict definitions of a company culture and think about intention of the people in that, is there intention to try to like get up the corporate ladder here or position, right, or be, is that their intention? Is that where their energy is? Or is their energy like going, hey, what's best for the customer? What's best for growing this product? And so those are things that I'm grateful for the Hootsuite experience for, because listen, 99% of it was positive, but you can't go through that sort of growth without having some struggle.
It's quite the play on words. Greg Gunn's got his team pointing their guns in the right direction, right? It's pretty sweet. I hope that's, I don't know if it's a core value or whatever for Commit moving forward. Maybe a good segue into Commit. Greg, you're the co-founder, CEO of Commit. Can you tell the audience what is Commit? Why Commit? Why are you, you're a mover and a shaker. Why are you sinking your teeth into this?
I care deeply about a future of work where humans are still the center of it, and that we get to use the things that we're great at, which is connecting with each other, sharing information, even more. And so we know, especially this moment right now, that tech careers are more unstable. There's less career stability. We've seen a 500% increase in layoffs. We've seen a 30% decrease in open roles. We have this threat of AI replacing us. I am very pro AI, but just like it was like 15 years ago, The radiologists were threatened by AI scientists with, "Hey, I wouldn't be going in your profession. This is going to be replaced by AI." I think that pattern's going to continue, but we need help. And so Commit is dedicated to taking all the latest and greatest AI models to help provide more career stability and security to tech workers. And so we believe that the opportunity is now for every tech worker, every knowledge worker to have their own AI career agent, just like a Hollywood agent that is a true fiduciary for them, that takes in all their information and helps them guide their career with data. And this is something that's only been available to the top class athletes or musicians. Now we have the technology to distribute this to everybody, where you can focus on becoming great at your craft while your AI agent is out there and networking with other AI agents to just bring you opportunities to learn and earn. And so that is something that we're passionate about. We think it's something that can not only help individuals have more career stability and security, but can guide them towards places where they can have the most impact. And net actually materially increase the amount of innovation in the world when we make sure the right people can seamlessly connect together for opportunities to learn and earn.
It's amazing. I speak often with new grads or folks transitioning in their career, and what they'll often ask me is, how do you recommend I, you know, find something new, or land on something, that I want to sink my teeth in? How do I find a job? Really, simplest way to put it. And what I would always say to people is be proactive. Sure, you can apply to job boards, but like, go direct to founders, to CEOs, to hiring managers. Find them on LinkedIn. Find them anywhere. And that's finding a job is like a full-time job. And what Commit is doing is taking that massive lift, certainly timely right now, as there are layoffs and massive technological shifts, and saying, "Hey, we can carry that lift for you."
Listen, there's a lot of companies. They're building solutions for companies, HR tech, and that's great. There's a whole category. There's a whole bunch of people that are doing HR tech. Just like I was talking before about there's those, I'm not one of those entrepreneurs that goes, "Oh yeah, companies are covered when it comes to AI to read resumes and all that." Like, there's enough out there. We really see a huge opportunity to serve the talent directly. And the same prosumer tools that we built, freemium SaaS tools that I built at the eBay company, and the freemium SaaS tools that we built at Hootsuite, where we're building tools to help make people better at their jobs. That's what we're doing at Commit. We're really treating the talent as the customer and building that trust where they have a true fiduciary that's automating these workflows. Again, starting with researching, shortlisting, and applying to jobs. Today, if you're a developer and you're in our private beta, every day is like a stand up with your agent. It's 30 seconds. It's part of your routine. It doesn't feel like searching for a job. We're really targeting actually passive job seekers, software developers that have jobs today. That 80% of them actually are passive job seekers. That's up from like 20% 3 years ago. Where you have a job, you're not growing, you're not advancing, but it's scary out there. So you really need assistance. You need a true fiduciary to help you find, research, and apply to those jobs. So we automate those workflows today. But ultimately, this is stuff that I don't want my kids to have to deal with. I don't know about you, when I first got my job, it was type out your resume, go to FedEx and get a bunch of copies, and then go to the mall and drop them off. The fact that we still use resumes is such a funny thing to me, when we have all these data on us. But in general, I just think that it's a lot of hours. It's a lot of wasted human hours that we would be so much better off if people spend those hours becoming great at their craft rather than having to go out there and promote themselves and apply and waste time on both sides there. So we really want to automate those flows.
So let's be very clear here. I mean, Commit is leveraging AI, automation, mixing and personalization, and understanding the user, who ultimately is a human, an individual. And I mean, this is a very candidate human approach, leveraging AI. But let's be very clear here. I mean, your customer is the human, and making
Yes.
their life easier and way
Yes.
better.
Our mission is
Um,
to use this technology to connect professionals together for opportunities to learn and earn. And that connecting professionals together is really, really important. We still believe in a future that's remote first and asynchronous, but there is still a need for people to connect directly, to support each other, from camaraderie, for sharing information. Life's just better when you have real connections with people. And so that's our vision, is that you can have an AI agent that just takes care of all the monotonous, stressful, annoying parts of managing a career and gives you data on how to manage it. So previously, managing a career was like trying to lose weight without tracking your calories, right? Like you just kind of like, okay, I think I can go do this and then this. Now we have the data where we can give you a real liquidity score. Go, hey, if you were laid off tomorrow, how long would it take you to actually find a job with a similar salary? And if the liquidity for your skills are going down, which we can tell you, something like QA analysts, I've got with the data that we track, I've gone down 23%. The opportunities there have gone down 23% in the last 6 months. Well, you want that feedback so that you can upskill and reskill and make sure that you're still relevant and you're progressing your skills. And having that actual agency over your career, that doesn't exist without data. And so for us, we're going to be expanding our services to make sure that people have that data and they can make cognizant decisions on where they want to grow and how they want to contribute.
Greg, this is a completely different world today compared to, you know, just 2 years ago. Completely different world compared to a decade ago. Um, to manage a career, to progress in a career, I mean, what humans do and how they succeed is changing, right? And you talked about the skills that they need, in this world of AI, you talked about upskilling. Are there things that come to mind that are particularly important for software engineers to future proof their careers, if I can say it like that?
You can't overreact to things that are outside of your control, right? But you can go back to fundamentals. And it's about making sure you're finding places where you can contribute the most still, right? And it's still about your network. It's still about making authentic connect, whether you're remote or not, making authentic connections with other folks. Kind of going back to my definition of culture, you know, make sure that people know that you are focused on the right things, like how we're going to build right for the customers. It's not about politics. It's not, so kind of go back to these fundamental things. It's always been important to try out new languages, be curious, be a whole human being, but now it's being a little bit more purposeful about which skills am I really going to develop? Where's the liquidity? Where is the demand? Right? There's the things you're really good at, and then there's the things that companies want. And in between those is where you can contribute the most. And so you are not an island on yourself. Just because you're a software developer doesn't mean that people are going to come knocking down your door. Now it's about going, okay, I got to manage my career in a professional way and think about, hey, what are the things that I love that I have a unique skill for? Be true to that. What is the market looking for? And then finding that Venn diagram where they overlap, where you can contribute the most to where the economy is at, where it works at, where the job labor market is at.
I love that. I mean, adaptability has always been important. I think more so moving forward. You talked a little bit there about learning, upskilling, being an active learner, working with new tools. The rate of innovation is only speeding up, which is crazy to think. I mean, I don't know, 25 years ago, we didn't have the internet. You know what I mean?
Right.
Um, so being an active learner, constantly trying to figure new things out, being an entrepreneur, whether that's you're actually starting a company or as a software engineer, it's a mindset, it's a way of thinking, I think is critical. And I know that, I think I read this somewhere, Greg. I don't know where it was. I think I don't know, it was a blog or something that you wrote on, and you talked about the importance of unlearning. We were just talking about active learning. My goodness. I mean, being able to let go of old tasks that were manual and being able to adapt. I couldn't think of anything more relevant. Um, I think that's so important. Kudos for you. I honestly, I think it was a blog post that you wrote or something.
Yeah, honestly, that's the hardest thing as we get older and older. But like there's positive struggle and there's negative struggle, right? Like health issues, relation, those are. But for your career, you should be looking for some struggle. You should be looking for places that stretch you because that means you're growing and that you're turning into a different professional than you were a year ago, which is, you know, so much of human beings is pattern recognition, staying here. Hey, I want things predictable, right? There's really great jobs for
Yes,
people that want predictability. We need people that are very, type A, organized, predictable. When they're an accountant or a lawyer, there's things that we need stability in.
controller.
But when you're building new things, that adaptability, that flexibility, that saying goodbye to things that you not skills, but maybe worldviews, um, opinions, and challenging those opinions, that's what we really need. And so that's, again, if you're focused, if you're coming into a company, it's not about being the most right person in that foxhole. It's like, okay, what do we need to go and like conquer this land and take on that next space? And so that requires flexibility and adaptability and I want to say a confidence in your own skills, but maybe just a comfort in your approach is another way to say it. Like, hey, I've done these things before. I've put myself into different situations, and here's the things that have led to me being successful in those situations. And I just got to trust that those things exist no matter what environment I put in.
100%. 100%. I think about my team at Stacked SP and the recruiting world. And I can't think of a year and a half or a couple years where things have changed so much. The tools, the way that you navigate processes and best practices for candidate experience and how to get to a great hire quicker. And I keep telling my team, like, be okay with being a bit uncomfortable and be okay with letting certain things go and learning new things and being scrappy. Um, so I think that's obviously very relevant. Greg, what about, you know, uh, there's layoffs going on. Are there particular functions or roles that come to your mind that are particularly layoff proof, or ones that, where should people be going next? What should people be getting into? Um, what are your thoughts?
One of the great, one of the silver linings of COVID and digital and the hiring that happened was that we actually had initiatives that were looking for more diverse workforces. Hiring managers had a lot of people to hire, and they could actually take chances on people that maybe didn't have the exact experience required for the job, but had the capacity to grow and learn, which opened up that plus remote allowed us to create a lot more diverse teams than ever before. Tech has historically been very monoculture. So let's call it out. Today, that doesn't exist. Because of the way that it's become an employer's market, if you're a hiring manager and you know you've only got one headcount and you can't mess it up and you're even threatened about your own job, if you're building a new API, you're going to look for the candidate that has experience doing that. And it's just logical, right? But the problem is that the people with the capacity and the right attitude and effort are not getting those opportunities. So we just have to be practical right now at this moment in time, which is be really practical about where your experiences are, where those can contribute, and do your research. Find the places where it can contribute the most. Don't just take the job that's recommended to you on some job site because, frankly, that job already has 1,500 applicants because it's probably a promoted job. You have to do your research in terms of the companies that you can contribute to. Number one, you got to use your network. But I think right now, it's not the thing that people want to hear, but it's like you have to be extremely practical about, hey, based on my skills and experiences, where can I uniquely contribute? But going back to what you brought up before about the need for adaptability and flexibility, you know better than anybody. Skills and experience will get you in the job, but what makes you successful is your attitude and effort. And so we're in this weird stage of work where people are like, hey, we need to see this stuff on your resume to get in here. But then we know that work's going to change so much in the next 3, 4, or 5 years that it comes back down to attitude and effort.
I think an area to dive into here is remote work, in office work. I know this is something that you are passionate about. Can you talk to me a little bit about that? What's your philosophy around it? Um, yeah.
Business owners, managers, they can choose to build whatever company they want to build. I have firmly chosen to do the harder thing with remote, and it is harder still today. I think about remote work still in its early days, kind of like the first generation iPhone, where it's the future, but it still doesn't have some core features like copy and paste. So you can either go back to your BlackBerry, which a lot of business users are choosing to, or you can go, hey, this iPhone thing's a thing. let's work with making this better. Telecommunications and telecommuting and remote work still not going to replace face-to-face. I think face-to-face is still important for organizations because there's just something about that, but you don't need to be spending 5 days in the office with people that you're professionally building with. We don't need to replace actual friends, family, and community with coworkers. These are all different categories, and actually it can kind of be quite perverse when you combine all these things together because it becomes a very frail single pillar that you're building your life on. That's why it's so traumatic to leave a company, especially 10 years, 20 years ago, because it was your friends and family, right? And so it's much more healthy for us to separate these things. So I think these are all practical things. And within reason, I think that remote work is fundamentally pro-human. If you're going to start a startup, the chances are you're going to fail. So you might as well fail at something that's worth failing at. And helping create a world where there's more equal access to opportunities is something that's absolutely worth failing at.
So I love the way that you just framed the remote work sort of theme and topic. I mean, today it's very much framed as employee versus employer, remote or not. It's only those are the only two options, whatever else. And I think you said somewhere or wrote in a piece, that really it's a celebration of, human innovation and of technology and the upside of incredible talent being anywhere and being able to contribute to anything anywhere is massive.
I think I use the thing I'm changing on is the cost efficiency of remote. I used to be like, hey, you get better talent and it's more cost effective to run a remote org. That's where I've changed my mind. It shouldn't be more cost effective. You should at least be taking the same amount that you put aside for offices and probably top it up so that people can spend time together face to face in some capacity, once a year, twice a year, whatever it ends up being for your organization. Because at the end of the day, I'm a humanist and relationships are the most important thing to me. And it's having those deeper relationships with people matters. It makes work more meaningful and camaraderie. But we already were doing this with retreats and, planning sessions and going to conferences together. I think that's what I'm bullish on with, like, I like to change my mind on things. And that's where I think we should actually be doubling down on those events where but the rule that we've had historically at Commit is in face-to-face events, there's one rule. You can talk about anything except for work.
I mean, every day we jump on Zoom calls and you talk work and, maybe there's the 30-second intro at the beginning about kids, but do you do you create a genuine relationship like you can in person? And at an event, yeah, just
Can
grab
I
a
tie it
beer.
to a
Just
huge failure that I've had in the past?
sure,
Good
sure,
time.
yeah.
The biggest failure I had as an executive was in my last year at Hootsuite. And I was very business driven, I career driven. And I had my own team. It was an internal incubator. We had like 80 different employees over 5 different projects. A couple of them were acquisitions we made. It was really ideal for me. I got to be a hyper entrepreneur, right? But the company had kind of hit a wall. We weren't growing as fast as we had projected. And there was talks of cutbacks for the first time ever. Now return like rifts are big things. For us, it was like we had grown from like 8 people to 1,300 people around the world. We'd never done a reduction in force or layoffs or anything. And I saw a culture there, which I was a part of, where it was like, okay, we go to the executive meeting. Hey, we go away. We go and try to fix our thing in the corner, and go back and present it, and then go away and fix it, go back and present it. And I had this identity as to being like, hey, I'm one of the early executives, Ryan's right hand. I'm the guy who gets shit done. I was kind of like the unofficial kind of mediator between the new guard and the old guard and all that sort of stuff. And I actually forget what triggered it, but I wasn't spending time getting to know the other executives, especially the new executives. If I had to work with them, I'd get to know them. But I just was so business focused. I was so focused on my own thing and like protecting my thing. And I forget what it was, but somebody influenced me. I was like, you know what? The culture here is messed up. We got to just get together as an exec instead of going away and doing our things and just going to the central person, which was the CRO at the time. We got to we're not fighting for scare. We should just get to know. So there's a kind of trashy dive bar called the Anza Club that was like right across from Hootsuite. So I was like, hey, all the VPs, we're going to go and grab beers at the Anza Club. And the only rule is we're not going to talk about work. We're just going to get to know each other. Like saying that kids. And I really didn't realize how bad it was until got the back channel that another executive had like reached out to the other, like we had a lot of US executives and he's like, oh my God, Greg is asking us to go grab drinks at the Anza Club. It's like, I know he's really close with Ryan. Like, is this the way that Canadians like let people go? Like there's so much mistrust because I was in my corner doing my thing and I didn't realize this, that it was like this huge weight was lifted when we started doing it every week. And yeah, we went through tough times because I was so focused on my own shit, which is kind of what happens when we're threatened, right? We want to go away to our corner and focus on our own thing, right? When we're threatened. But really in that environment, we worked in offices, but it was important there to like make sure that, we shake hands with each other to show that we're not bearing arms, right? Like you need to kind of like have that human connection with people. It makes everything that much easier down the line. And so whether it's in an office or not, making that time, that's culture to me. Again, no, we're shaking hands. There's no weapons here. Has to do, you're in the foxhole, you know where the weapons are pointed. This is something that's like just innately human. And it's existed before in offices, and I think it exists even more so in remote first.
Totally. And it needs a very conscious, proactive approach to ensure that doesn't become the case. Greg, that's really cool, and appreciate that sort of story. Um, we're at about time here. I got one final question for you. The future of work is about humans versus machines, or the future of work is humans and machines working together? What's the Greg Gunn? What's the Greg Gunn take?
My job is not sending emails. My job is not filling out Excel spreadsheets. My job is to be a human being that problem solves, finds creative ways to solve problems. Like I still think business at its core is a creative act. You're building things that don't exist. And so that is what we need. Like creating, building, thinking, communicating, connecting. That's gonna be not, it's always been vital, But now we get to take all the other things off of our plate that are not that. And we get to use the things that make us uniquely human and use these tools to expand our impact.